My name is Rebecca, 28, and last month I finally reached senior software engineer at my tech startup. The promotion came with a substantial salary increase, triple what I earned 3 years ago. After growing up watching my manipulative mother drain every penny I earned while spoiling my entitled brother Jason, I thought moving 3 states away had secured my peace. I built a life where my money was finally my own. Then my mom somehow found out about my new income level, and my carefully constructed sanctuary crumbled overnight. Before I continue this nightmare, drop a comment below about your own family financial drama, and subscribe if you want more stories about learning to set boundaries with toxic relatives who see you as nothing but a walking ATM. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with perfectly manicured lawns and houses that looked nearly identical. From the outside, we appeared to be the ideal American family. But appearances were everything to my mother, Diane. At 48, she still carries herself with the poise of someone constantly being photographed for a magazine cover. Her blonde hair is always perfectly styled, her clothes always designer brands, and her smile always camera-ready. What the neighbors couldn't see was her narcissistic personality, her financial irresponsibility, and how she weaponized money within our family. My brother Jason, now 25, was her perfect angel. 3 years younger than me, he never had to work for anything. While I was babysitting neighborhood kids at 13, Jason was receiving the latest gaming systems. While I was working at the local grocery store during high school, Jason was crashing cars that my mother would promptly replace. He never held a job longer than a few months, usually quitting because the work was beneath him or because a manager disrespected him by asking him to show up on time. Our family dynamic shifted dramatically when my father left. I was 12, and Jason was 9. The day after Dad moved out, Mom sat me down at the kitchen table, her eyes red but dry. "Your father left because of your attitude," she told me, her voice eerily calm. "Your constant demands and your disrespect drove him away. Now it's up to you to step up and help this family." It wasn't true, of course. Years later, I learned Dad left because of Mom's gambling debts and emotional manipulation. But at 12, I believed her and carried that guilt for years. That conversation marked the beginning of my financial exploitation. Any money I received as gifts from relatives mysteriously disappeared from my desk drawer. "I'm just keeping it safe for you," Mom would say when confronted. I never saw those funds again. By 16, I was working 30 hours a week at 2 part-time jobs while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. My paychecks went directly to my mother for household expenses while she bought Jason new clothes and the latest iPhone. If I dared question this arrangement, Mom would launch into tearful tirades about her sacrifices and my selfishness. "After all I've done for you," she would sob dramatically at the kitchen table. "I've given up my whole life for you kids, and this is how you repay me? By being so selfish?" Jason learned from her example. By the time he was 13, he felt entitled to my things. My laptop, which I had saved for months to buy for schoolwork, frequently ended up in his room for gaming. When I complained, Mom sided with him. "You need to share with your brother. He needs that computer for school too." He didn't. His school-issued Chromebook sat unused while he played games on my laptop that I needed for AP computer science homework. The summer before my senior year of high school, I secretly applied for scholarships and financial aid. I knew college was my only escape, and I was determined to make it happen. When my acceptance letter from a computer science program in Illinois arrived with a partial scholarship, Mom's reaction was telling. "Who's going to help with the bills while you're off playing college student?" she demanded, waving the letter I had foolishly left on the kitchen counter. "And what about Jason? He'll miss you." Jason, sprawled on the couch with his phone, didn't even look up. Despite her attempts to sabotage my plans, I left for college that fall. I worked 2 part-time jobs between classes, maintained my scholarship with top grades, and took out student loans to cover what I couldn't earn. Those 4 years were exhausting but liberating. For the first time, I controlled my own money. No one rifled through my wallet while I slept or guilt me into handing over my paycheck. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a tech startup in Minneapolis. I specifically chose a company across town from my mother's house and found an apartment I could barely afford just to maintain my independence. Even with that distance, Mom would show up unannounced whenever she needed money. "The electric company is threatening to shut off our power," she'd say, or "Jason's car needs repairs for his job interviews." At first, guilt compelled me to help. The programming I received throughout childhood, that I was responsible for my family's financial well-being, was hard to override. But as these emergencies became suspiciously frequent and Jason remained perpetually unemployed, I began setting limits. When I declined to pay for Jason's third car repair in 2 months, Mom didn't speak to me for weeks. It hurt, but it was also peaceful. Eventually, I recognized the pattern. Mom only contacted me when she wanted something. Our relationship was transactional, not emotional. For years into my career, I moved to Chicago for a better position at a larger tech company. The physical distance helped me maintain firmer boundaries. Our contact dwindled to occasional holiday calls and her periodic financial emergency texts, which I began responding to with resource information rather than money. "The Community Action Agency on Elm Street can help with utility assistance," I would text back. Or, "The Workforce Center offers free job training programs." These responses were met with either radio silence or accusations of being cold and uncaring. Each time, I felt less guilt and more certainty that I was breaking a toxic cycle. In Chicago, I built a peaceful life. My apartment wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I made friends who valued me for my personality, not my paycheck. I started therapy to address the financial anxiety and guilt my upbringing had instilled. For nearly 3 years, I felt like I could breathe. Then came my promotion to senior software engineer, and everything changed. The celebration dinner with my friends at Bartoli's, an upscale Italian restaurant in downtown Chicago, felt like a dream. Megan, my best friend since college, raised her glass of champagne. "To Rebecca, the most badass coder I know," she toasted. "You've earned every bit of this success." Around the table, 6 friends clinked glasses, their genuine happiness for me both touching and unfamiliar. Growing up, my achievements were either dismissed or somehow twisted into an obligation to share the rewards. But here, in this moment, my success was simply celebrated. Later that night, slightly tipsy on champagne and validation, I made a rare social media post, a photo of my celebration dinner with the caption "Big promotion celebration with the best friends anyone could ask for." #blessed #hard work pays off. I didn't mention my new title or salary. I'd learned long ago to keep financial details private. But I underestimated the small-town gossip network that still connected my past to my present. 3 days after my post, my phone lit up with my mother's name, a rare occurrence unless she needed something. I almost let it go to voicemail but answered on the final ring. "Rebecca, sweetheart." Her voice dripped with an enthusiasm I hadn't heard in years. "Melissa Hargrove told me about your wonderful promotion. I'm so proud of you." Melissa Hargrove. My high school chemistry lab partner whose mother played bridge with mine. Of course. "Thanks, Mom," I replied cautiously, already feeling the familiar tension creeping up my neck. "You must be making quite the impressive salary now," she continued, her tone casual but probing. "Silicon Valley money right there in Chicago. Does your company have good benefits? Stock options? Profit sharing?" Red flags waved frantically in my mind. These were not the questions of a mother simply proud of her daughter's accomplishments. "The compensation is fair," I answered vaguely. "How are you and Jason doing?" She glossed over my question with practiced ease. "Oh, we're managing. You know how it is. But listen, I've been thinking it's been far too long since we've seen each other. I'd love to come visit, maybe this weekend? Just to celebrate your success in person." My stomach clenched. Mom lived in Minneapolis, over 6 hours away. She'd never once suggested visiting me in Chicago, not even when I first moved. "This weekend?" I stammered, mentally canceling my plans to try that new hiking trail with Megan. That's really short notice, Mom. Oh, it's no trouble. I can drive down Friday after work. We could have a nice lunch on Saturday, my treat. I'll get a hotel, don't worry about hosting me. Something in her tone, the forced casualness, the unusual generosity, sent alarm bells ringing. But the programming of my childhood was strong. Say yes to Mom. Don't cause problems. Be a good daughter. I guess Saturday lunch could work, I conceded, already regretting the words as they left my mouth. Wonderful. I'll text you when I get to town. I can't wait to see you, sweetheart. After hanging up, I sat on my couch feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. 3 years of minimal contact, and suddenly my mother wanted to drive 6 hours for lunch. The last time she'd shown this much interest in my life was when I received my first real tax refund in college, which she had insisted I owed her for raising me. I called Megan immediately, pacing my living room as I recounted the conversation. She found out about your promotion and suddenly wants to visit? Classic, Megan said, not bothering to hide her suspicion. What does she really want? Money, probably, I sighed. But maybe I'm being unfair. Maybe she genuinely wants to celebrate with me? The silence on Megan's end spoke volumes. Okay, yeah, I hear how naive that sounds, I admitted. But it's just lunch. I'll meet her at a restaurant, keep it brief, and send her on her way. I'm a grown woman. I can handle one lunch. Just be careful, Megan cautioned. And call me immediately after. That night, sleep eluded me. I tossed and turned, plagued by memories of financial manipulations past and anxiety about what new angle my mother might try. By morning, I had developed a solid game plan: meet at a moderately priced restaurant, keep conversation light, deflect personal financial questions, and establish a clear endpoint to the visit. Saturday morning arrived with gray skies and a light drizzle that matched my mood. I dressed carefully in nice jeans and a simple blouse, put together but not flashy. Nothing that screamed recent promotion. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom, just arrived in town. Can't wait to see you at Luigi's at noon. I have a surprise for you. A surprise. My anxiety spiked. In my experience, my mother's surprises were never good news. At precisely noon, I pulled into the restaurant parking lot and spotted my mother's blue sedan, the same one she'd been driving for years despite numerous complaints about needing a new car. As I approached the restaurant entrance, my steps faltered. Standing beside my mother, sullenly scrolling through his phone, was my brother Jason. My heart sank. This was the surprise. Mom hadn't come alone. Rebecca, darling. Mom exclaimed, arms outstretched as if we were the closest of relatives. Her blonde hair was freshly highlighted, her makeup flawless. She wore a new-looking dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I accepted her embrace stiffly, inhaling the familiar cloud of expensive perfume. Hey, Becca, Jason mumbled, not looking up from his phone. He'd grown a patchy beard since I'd last seen him, and his designer jeans and Jordan sneakers contrasted sharply with his overall disheveled appearance. I didn't know you were coming too, Jason, I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Mom said we were going to Chicago for the weekend. Didn't mention it was to see you until we were on the road. He sounded as thrilled about this reunion as I felt. Mom looped her arm through mine, steering me toward the restaurant door. I thought it would be lovely for all of us to be together. It's been so long since we've been a family. 3 years and 4 months, to be exact. Since the last time I'd refused to bail Jason out of credit card debt, and Mom had called me a selfish, heartless daughter who cared more about money than family. As we were seated at our table, Mom looked around the modest Italian restaurant with poorly disguised disappointment. This is cozy. I thought with your big promotion you might want to celebrate somewhere a bit more special. And there it was. The first jab. Luigi's has the best carbonara in Chicago, I replied evenly. I thought you'd appreciate the authentic Italian cuisine. Oh, of course, dear, she said with a tight smile. As she opened her menu, she added, "I'm just surprised your apartment is in this neighborhood. I expected something a bit more upscale for someone so successful." Second jab, right on schedule. This was going to be a long lunch. The waiter had just set down our appetizer, a margarita pizza to share, when Mom leaned forward with a conspiratorial smile. "So tell me about this promotion," she said, her voice honeyed with false casualness. "Senior software engineer sounds very impressive. What exactly does that entail?" I took a deliberate bite of pizza before answering, buying time to formulate a suitably vague response. "It's mostly additional responsibilities," I said carefully. "More complex projects, some team leadership. And the compensation must reflect those responsibilities," she pressed, eyes gleaming with interest. Jason, who had been texting continuously since we sat down, suddenly perked up. "Yeah, those tech jobs pay bank," he said, finally pocketing his phone. "My buddy's cousin works for Google and has a Tesla." I sipped my water, avoiding the bait. "The industry compensates fairly. How have you been, Jason? Any job prospects?" He scowled, and Mom jumped in before he could respond. "Jason has been focused on his entrepreneurial ventures," she said, patting his hand. "He's very selective about his opportunities." Translation, still unemployed by choice. "I'm between things right now," Jason muttered, returning to his phone. Mom brushed an invisible crumb from her sleeve. "Rebecca, does your company offer stock options? Profit sharing?" I was reading an article about tech compensation packages being quite complex. "Some benefits are confidential," I deflected. "How's Minneapolis? Still in the same house?" "Oh, the neighborhood has gone downhill," she sighed dramatically. "The Hendersons next door sold to a family with 4 kids and a dog. So much noise. But the real estate market is so unpredictable right now. It's not the right time to sell." Our entrees arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. I had ordered the simplest pasta dish on the menu, suddenly conscious of every dollar I spent in front of my mother's calculating gaze. Mom took a dainty bite of her salmon, then set her fork down with practiced precision. "Actually, Rebecca, there's something important we wanted to discuss with you." The "we" sent a warning chill down my spine. Jason looked up from his phone, suddenly engaged. "We've been having some financial difficulties," Mom continued, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a dignified whisper. "Nothing we can't overcome as a family, of course." "What kind of difficulties?" I asked, though I already knew this was the real purpose of their visit. "Well," Mom dabbed at the corner of her mouth with her napkin, "I've had some unexpected expenses. And poor Jason's car was repossessed last month because of a misunderstanding with the financing company." Jason nodded solemnly. "Total scam. They said I missed 3 payments, but I'm sure I mailed them." I bit my tongue to keep from pointing out that online banking had existed for over a decade. "The thing is," Mom continued, "I had to help Jason with a place to stay and reliable transportation to job interviews, which stretched my resources. And then there was the unfortunate business with the casino." "Casino?" I echoed, my fork frozen midway to my mouth. Mom had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. "I may have taken a small loan to cover some gambling debts. $15,000. Nothing astronomical." I nearly choked. $15,000 isn't astronomical? "Mom, that's a temporary setback," she interrupted smoothly. "Which is why we're thinking about establishing a family emergency fund." There it was. The ask, wrapped in the guise of mutual support. "A family emergency fund," I repeated slowly. "Exactly." Mom brightened, mistaking my repetition for interest. "Since you're doing so well now, senior engineer at a major tech company, we thought you could manage the fund. For all of us." "All of us meaning?" "Well, me and Jason, of course. And you, if you ever needed it, though with your salary I doubt you would." Jason leaned forward, suddenly animated. "Yeah, like, you could set up automatic transfers each month." Mom says you probably make at least 10 grand a month now, so even a couple thousand to the family fund would be no big deal. My blood ran cold. They had clearly discussed this at length, even calculated what they thought I earned and what they felt entitled to claim. Let me get this straight, I said, setting down my fork. You want me to give you thousands of dollars every month for a family emergency fund that only you two would use? Mom's expression hardened slightly before melting into wounded innocence. Rebecca, after all I sacrificed for you. All those years I worked extra shifts to put food on the table. I worked since I was 16 to put food on that table, I interrupted, my voice sharper than intended. My paychecks went to household expenses while Jason got new video games. Jason slammed his hand on the table, causing nearby diners to turn and stare. Don't start that again. Mom always made sure we both had what we needed. Not her fault you were always so obsessed with saving every penny. I saved every penny because no one else was going to pay for my education, I hissed back, aware we were creating a scene but past the point of caring. I gave you everything, Mom said, her voice rising. Everything. And now that you're successful, you can't even help your family in a time of need? What kind of daughter are you? The familiar guilt rose in my throat, but something new rose alongside it, anger. Pure, clarifying anger. I'm the kind of daughter who worked my ass off to escape financial exploitation, I said, my voice low but intense. And I won't be pulled back into it. Mom's face contorted with shock, then fury, then tactical tears. How can you say such hurtful things? I'm your mother. Nearby tables were openly staring now. I signaled the waiter for the check, desperate to end this public spectacle. This conversation is over, I said firmly. I'll pay for lunch, and then you both need to go back to your hotel. We don't have a hotel, Jason said with a smirk. Mom said we'd stay with you. Of course. The hotel had been another manipulation. The waiter arrived with the check, and I handed over my credit card without looking at the total. Mom dabbed at her eyes with her napkin, the picture of maternal suffering, while Jason glared at me with undisguised contempt. The drive back to my apartment passed in tense silence. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles whitened, regretting my decision to let them follow me home rather than calling them an Uber from the restaurant. But some small, conditioned part of me couldn't bring myself to strand my mother and brother in an unfamiliar city, despite their manipulation. As I unlocked my apartment door, dread settled in my stomach. I had allowed them into my sanctuary, my safe space. Mom immediately began wandering through my modest two-bedroom apartment, running her finger along surfaces as if checking for dust. It's smaller than I expected, she remarked, eyeing my IKEA furniture with poorly disguised disappointment. But I suppose you're saving your money wisely. That's good. Jason flopped onto my couch, shoes still on, and reached for the remote. Got any food? I'm still hungry. I stood in the entryway, key still in hand, feeling like a stranger in my own home. Mom had shifted tactics, moving from confrontation to a softer approach. Her eyes welled with fresh tears as she touched a framed photo of me at college graduation. I was so proud that day, she said softly. My brilliant daughter, first in our family to graduate college. I always knew you'd be successful. She hadn't attended my graduation. She'd claimed she couldn't afford the trip, though she'd taken Jason to a concert in Chicago just 2 weeks earlier. I know I haven't been perfect, Mom continued, her voice wavering just enough to sound vulnerable without becoming messy. Being a single mother was so hard, Rebecca. You can't imagine the stress, the constant worry about money. I could imagine it quite well, since she'd transferred that stress directly to my adolescent shoulders. I just want us to be a family again, she said, reaching for my hand. Is that so wrong? For a mother to want her children to be close? Her fingers closed around mine, and I felt the old familiar pull of guilt and obligation. The programming ran deep: take care of Mom, don't upset her, be the responsible one. From the couch, Jason snorted. Just tell her about your gambling problem, Mom. Stop with the sob story. Mom's expression flashed with anger before settling back into calculated vulnerability. It was just a small setback. I've joined a support group and everything. But the debt collector calls keep coming, and I'm afraid they'll take the house. As she spoke, I noticed Jason had wandered away from the couch. I turned to see him examining my collection of tech books in the hallway leading to my home office and bedroom. "Nice setup," he called out. "Is your bedroom down here?" I called dibs on the real bed. "Mom can have the couch." The presumption that they were staying the night, despite my clear signals at the restaurant, ignited fresh anger in me. But before I could respond, I realized he was opening the door to my home office, where my work laptop sat connected to dual monitors. "Jason, that's my private office," I called out sharply. "Please don't go in there." But he had already disappeared inside. "This is a sweet setup," Jason's voice came from my office. "2 monitors? Must be nice." I extracted my hand from Mom's grip and rushed down the hallway. When I entered my home office, Jason was already seated at my desk, hands hovering over my keyboard. "Get away from my computer," I demanded, moving quickly to stand beside him. "Relax, I'm just looking," he said, but made no move to get up. "Is this what you use for your fancy coding job?" On the screen, I could see he had minimized my work applications and opened my personal email. My blood ran cold when I realized he was only one click away from my financial statements, which were organized in a folder in my email. "Jason, get up now," I said, my voice dangerous and low. Rebecca, Mom appeared in the doorway, her tone scolding as if I were the one violating boundaries. "Don't be rude. Your brother is just interested in your work." I stepped forward and firmly closed my laptop. "He's not interested in my work. He's snooping through my personal information." Jason stood up with exaggerated slowness, hands raised in mock surrender. "Just checking email. Didn't realize it was such a big deal." "You don't check email on someone else's computer without asking," I said through gritted teeth. "And you definitely don't go through their private office." "Private office," he mimicked in a high voice. "Listen to Miss Silicon Valley over here. Too important to share with family." Mom stepped into the room, positioning herself between us like a mediator though she was anything but neutral. "Rebecca, there's no need to overreact. We're family. There shouldn't be secrets between us." "Privacy isn't secrecy," I countered, feeling my control slipping. "And this isn't about privacy. It's about respect, which neither of you seem to understand." "Oh, here we go with the respect lecture," Jason rolled his eyes. "Maybe if you respected Mom enough to help with her debts instead of hoarding all your tech money." "That's enough," I cut him off, turning to face both of them. "Let's be honest about why you're really here." "It's not to celebrate my promotion. It's to find out how much money I make and how much you can get from me." Mom's face transformed, her vulnerable mask dropping to reveal the calculating expression beneath. "Well, someone has certainly developed a high opinion of herself. We came all this way to visit you, and this is how you treat us? You came all this way to establish a family emergency fund that you expect me to finance," I corrected her. 15,000 for gambling debts? A new car for Jason? What else is on your wish list?" Mom's eyes narrowed. "We need 30,000, actually." 30, I sputtered, shocked by the bluntness of her admission. "For what?" 15 for the gambling debt, yes. 8,000 for a reliable used car for Jason, so he can get to job interviews. 5,000 as a down payment on a condo I've found. The neighborhood really has gone downhill, as I said. And 2,000 for an investment opportunity a friend told me about. She recited these figures as casually as if reading a grocery list, while my jaw quite literally dropped open. "You're asking me for $30,000? I repeated, my voice faint with disbelief. "It's not asking when it's family," Mom replied with steel in her tone. "It's your responsibility to help us. After everything I sacrificed to raise you." "Stop," I held up a hand. "Just stop. I'm not giving you $30,000. I'm not giving you any money." Selfish bitch, Jason muttered, just loud enough to ensure I heard. Mom didn't correct him. Instead, her expression hardened further. I knew success would change you. Your father was the same way. The moment he started making good money, he thought he was too good for his family. Dad left because you drained his accounts with your gambling and shopping addiction, I shot back, surprising even myself with this long-buried truth. Mom's eyes widened with genuine shock. Who told you that lie? Aunt Susan. Dad's sister. We reconnected at my college graduation, the one you skipped to take Jason to a concert. That witch never liked me, Mom sputtered, her composure cracking. She filled your head with lies about me, and you believed her over your own mother? It wasn't just what she said. It was the pattern I'd seen my whole life. Taking my birthday money, making me work to pay household bills while you bought designer clothes. It's financial abuse, Mom. That's what my therapist calls it. At the word therapist, Mom's expression turned venomous. So you've been airing our family's private business to some stranger? Telling lies about how I raised you? I gave you everything. You took everything, I corrected her, a lifetime of repressed feelings finally breaking through. Every dollar I earned, every opportunity one created for myself, you tried to take credit for or take control of. And I'm done letting you. Jason stepped forward, his body language suddenly threatening. You think you're so much better than us now with your fancy job and your perfect life. But you're nothing special. You just got lucky. Luck had nothing to do with it, I said, standing my ground despite his intimidating stance. I worked for everything I have. Something you wouldn't understand. You owe us, he snarled, jabbing a finger toward my face. All that money you're making, you owe us a share. That's what family does. Family doesn't treat each other like ATMs, I countered. Family supports each other emotionally, respects boundaries, and celebrates success without trying to profit from it. Mom stepped closer, her voice dropping to that dangerously quiet tone I remembered from childhood confrontations. Let me make this very clear, Rebecca. Either you help your family in our time of need, or you're choosing money over the people who raised you. The ultimatum hung in the air between us. In the past, this was where I would cave, where the guilt and programming would overcome my resistance. But something had shifted inside me. Perhaps it was seeing Jason attempting to access my financial information, or maybe it was simply the accumulation of years of manipulation finally reaching a breaking point. I'm choosing myself, I said quietly. Not money. Myself. My well-being. My right to build a life free from exploitation. Mom's face contorted with rage. After everything I've done for you. I need you both to leave, I interrupted, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Now. You can't be serious, Mom gasped. Completely serious. Get your things and go. Where are we supposed to stay? Jason demanded. We don't have a hotel. That's not my problem. You should have thought about that before trying to scam me out of $30,000. Mom switched tactics instantly, crumpling into a chair with one hand pressed to her heart. I don't feel well. I can't possibly travel right now. My blood pressure, you know I have a condition. The same condition she'd invoked countless times when confronted with the consequences of her actions. If you need medical attention, I'll call an ambulance, I offered, reaching for my phone. Otherwise, you need to leave. You would throw your own mother out on the street, she cried, tears flowing freely now. Your own brother? You have a car and enough money for gas to drive home. You managed to get here, you can manage to get back. Jason stepped closer, using his height advantage to loom over me. You're not kicking us out. We're family. We have every right to stay here. This is my apartment, my name on the lease, and you're trespassing, I said, refusing to be intimidated. Leave now, or I'm calling building security. You wouldn't dare, Mom hissed. I picked up my phone and dialed the front desk. Hello, this is Rebecca Thompson in 5B. I have 2 individuals in my apartment who are refusing to leave. Could you please send security up? Yes, I'll hold. Mom scrambled to her feet, the medical crisis miraculously resolved. You ungrateful, heartless girl. This isn't over. We'll be back tomorrow when you've calmed down and remembered your family obligations. Don't come back, I warned as they gathered their things. I won't let you in, and security has already been alerted. Jason shoved past me, deliberately bumping my shoulder hard enough to make me stumble. Mom paused at the door, her tear-streaked face a mask of wounded dignity. You'll regret this, Rebecca. When you have no one in your life who truly loves you, you'll remember this moment and wish you'd made a different choice. The door slammed behind them, and I sagged against the wall, my legs suddenly unable to support my weight. I slid down to the floor, shaking with adrenaline and suppressed emotion. For several minutes, I just sat there, breathing through waves of anxiety, guilt, and an unexpected sense of liberation. Then the tears came, great, heaving sobs that seemed to purge years of pent-up pain. When the security guard knocked to check on me, I managed to pull myself together enough to thank him and confirm that my visitors had left the building. Then I locked the door, turned off my phone, and curled up on my couch, emotionally exhausted but strangely, peacefully empty. After an hour of alternating between crying and staring blankly at my ceiling, I finally reached for my phone. 8 missed calls from Mom, 3 from Jason, and 16 text messages ranging from guilt trips to threats to attempts at reconciliation. I ignored them all and dialed Megan. How did it go? She asked immediately upon answering. They're gone, I said, my voice hoarse from crying. But it was bad. Really bad. I'm coming over, she declared. With emergency supplies. 20 minutes. True to her word, Megan arrived at my door 19 minutes later, armed with a bottle of wine, a pint of chocolate ice cream, and a large pizza. The sight of her standing there, loaded down with comfort food and concern, unleashed a fresh wave of tears. Oh, honey, she said, setting down her supplies to pull me into a hug. That bad, huh? Over pizza and wine, I recounted the entire disaster, the ambush at the restaurant, the financial demands, Jason's attempt to access my financial information, and the final confrontation that ended with me calling security on my own mother and brother. $30,000? Megan repeated incredulously. They seriously expected you to hand over 30 grand, just like that? Not just once, I clarified, sipping my wine. Mom talked about monthly contributions to a family emergency fund that only they would use. They had it all planned out, calculated what they thought I make, decided what percentage they were entitled to. That's not a family emergency fund, Megan scoffed. That's a parasite support system. The blunt assessment startled a laugh out of me, breaking the tension that had been coiled in my chest since my family's departure. The worst part is, for a minute there, I almost considered it, I admitted. When Mom started crying about losing the house, I felt this overwhelming guilt, like I was a horrible daughter for not helping. That's because she installed those guilt buttons in your psyche and knows exactly how to push them, Megan said, refilling my wine glass. She's been conditioning you since childhood to feel responsible for her financial well-being. My therapist calls it financial abuse, I said quietly. I've never said those words to my mother before today. How did she react? Like I'd accused her of a crime she couldn't possibly have committed. She blamed my aunt for filling my head with lies and seemed more upset about me seeing a therapist than about anything else. Megan nodded. Because therapy helps you see through the manipulation. That's threatening to her control. As the evening progressed, we moved from wine to ice cream, and my emotional state shifted from raw hurt to analytical processing. Megan, whose own family dynamics were complex though in different ways, offered both empathy and perspective. What are you going to do if they come back tomorrow like they threatened? She asked as midnight approached. They won't get past the lobby. I've already spoken with building security. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. But they'll keep trying to contact me. Mom's relentless when she wants something. You could block their numbers, Megan suggested. I could, but... I hesitated, struggling to articulate the complex emotions. they're still my family. As toxic as they are, cutting them off completely feels final. Like admitting that there's no hope for any kind of relationship. Setting boundaries doesn't have to mean cutting them off, Megan pointed out gently. It just means protecting yourself from their harmful behaviors. Long after Megan left, I sat at my computer, unable to sleep despite my emotional exhaustion. I found myself researching narcissistic family dynamics, financial abuse, and adult children of manipulative parents. Article after article described patterns that matched my experience with eerie precision: the golden child/scapegoat dynamic between Jason and me, the conditional love based on financial compliance, the guilt tactics and obligation rhetoric. One article particularly resonated: financial abuse, when family treats you like a bank account. It detailed how manipulative relatives establish a sense of eternal debt in their targets: you owe me because I raised you, because I'm family, because I sacrificed for you. The author described exactly what I'd experienced: the escalating demands, the entitlement to my earnings, the invasion of privacy to gain financial information. Around 3 a.m, my phone chimed with a text. Despite my better judgment, I checked it. Mom, I know you're upset, but family should always come first. I raised you better than this. These flowers are to remind you that despite your hurtful behavior today, a mother's love is unconditional. I'll call tomorrow when you've had time to reconsider your priorities. Attached was a photo of a lavish floral arrangement. I knew without checking that no actual flowers would arrive at my door. This was just another manipulation tactic. By morning, I had 17 missed calls and 34 text messages between Mom and Jason. The tone ranged from Mom's pseudo-understanding, "I know you're stressed with your new job responsibilities," to Jason's overtly threatening, "You think you can disrespect our mother like that and get away with it? We know where you live." I forwarded Jason's more threatening messages to my email as documentation, then called my therapist's office the moment they opened. "Dr. Harrison can see you for an emergency session at noon," the receptionist told me after hearing the urgency in my voice. The 4 hours until the appointment crawled by. I worked from home, unable to focus on coding but going through the motions. When an email notification appeared for a team meeting about the project I was leading, the contrast between my professional competence and personal turmoil felt jarring. At noon, I sat in Dr. Harrison's familiar office, the soft lighting and comfortable furniture providing a sense of safety I desperately needed. "You set a significant boundary," Dr. Harrison remarked after I recounted the previous day's events. "That took tremendous courage." "It doesn't feel like courage," I admitted. "It feels like I failed at being a daughter." "Failed according to whose standards?" she asked. "The metrics your mother established? The ones that require you to sacrifice your financial well-being to fulfill her needs?" Put that way, it seemed absurd, but the guilt remained. They're still my family. Shouldn't family help each other? Healthy family relationships involve mutual support, not one-sided exploitation, Dr. Harrison said. Let's talk about what healthy financial boundaries might look like in your situation. Over the next hour, we developed a concrete plan. I would document all contact attempts in case I needed legal protection. I would draft a clear, firm, but non-inflammatory message outlining my boundaries. I would role-play potential responses to prepare for the inevitable pushback. And I would take practical security measures to protect myself both financially and physically. The hardest part, Dr. Harrison warned as our session concluded, will be maintaining these boundaries in the face of escalating tactics. Your mother will likely try everything from health emergencies to family flying monkeys, relatives or friends she recruits to pressure you on her behalf. I'm already getting the health concerns in her texts, I confirmed. Chest pains, blood pressure spikes. Remember, you're not responsible for her emotional or physical health. She's an adult with choices and resources beyond you. I left the session feeling more grounded, with a plan and the validation that I wasn't cruel or selfish for protecting myself. On the way home, I stopped at my bank to add extra security measures to my accounts and began changing passwords on all my financial services. Back at my apartment, I sat down to craft the message Dr. Harrison and I had outlined. It needed to be clear but not cruel, firm but not inflammatory. After several drafts, I settled on: Mom and Jason, I need time and space to process yesterday's events. I will not be providing financial support now or in the future. Please respect my boundary by not coming to my home or workplace. I'll reach out when I'm ready to communicate further. I sent it as a text to both of them, then turned my phone to Do Not Disturb mode, allowing only calls from my approved contacts list to come through. Within minutes, my phone was lighting up with their responses, but I didn't read them. For the first time in my life, I was putting my well-being ahead of their demands, and despite the anxiety churning in my stomach, it felt right. Despite my clear message and the building security's awareness, my mother and Jason showed up at my apartment building the following afternoon. The front desk called up, as I'd instructed them to do if my family appeared. Ms. Thompson, there are 2 individuals in the lobby claiming to be your family. A Diane Thompson and Jason Thompson. They're insisting on coming up. I'm not receiving visitors, I replied, my heart racing despite my prepared response. Please don't allow them access to the elevator. Understood. Would you like us to ask them to leave the premises? I hesitated only briefly. Yes, please. And if they refuse, I authorize you to call the police for trespassing. 20 minutes later, my phone rang with the lobby's number again. Ms. Thompson, your family members are being quite insistent. Would you be willing to meet them in the lobby? They're claiming it's an emergency. I considered refusing, but Dr. Harrison's advice echoed in my mind: sometimes a brief, controlled in-person interaction with clear boundaries can be more effective than avoidance, which can escalate their tactics. I'll come down, I decided. But please have security nearby. When the elevator doors opened to the lobby, I spotted them immediately. Mom had transformed her appearance from yesterday's polished sophistication to calculated dishevelment, hair slightly messy, minimal makeup revealing fabricated exhaustion, clothes deliberately casual as if she hadn't had time to think about her appearance due to emergency concerns. Jason stood beside her, sullen and unshaven, scrolling through his phone with apparent disinterest that I knew would transform into engagement the moment money was mentioned. I approached them with deliberate calm, stopping several feet away, close enough for conversation, far enough to maintain physical and emotional distance. The security guard, a former military man named Marcus who had been kind to me when I explained the situation, positioned himself casually near the front desk, watching without being obvious. Rebecca. Mom's face lit up with calculated relief. Thank goodness. We've been so worried. You haven't been answering our calls or texts. I sent you a message explaining that I needed space, I replied evenly. What are you doing here? Space? After the way we left things? She reached for my hand, but I kept my arms firmly at my sides. Honey, families don't give each other space after disagreements. They talk things through. That's not what this is about, I said. You didn't come here to talk. You came with specific financial demands, and when I refused, you became hostile. Hostile? Mom's eyes widened with practiced innocence. I was upset, yes, but only because I love you so much. Seeing you turn your back on family when we need you, it broke my heart. Jason finally looked up from his phone. You made Mom cry all night. I'm sorry you were upset, I said carefully, following the script I'd rehearsed with Dr. Harrison. But my boundary stands. I will not be providing financial support. Mom's expression shifted subtly, the mask of maternal concern slipping to reveal calculation underneath. Let's not discuss this in the lobby, darling. Why don't we go up to your apartment where we can talk privately? No. We can talk here, or not at all. Her eyes narrowed fractionally before she forced her features back into concerned motherhood. Rebecca, sweetheart, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We didn't come here just for money. Then why did you come? To reconnect. To be a family again. She glanced around the lobby, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Yes, we have some financial challenges right now. All families help each other through rough patches. When Jason gets on his feet with a good job, he'll help me, just like I helped you growing up. The familiar distortion of reality, her claiming she had financially supported me rather than the reverse, no longer had the power to make me question my memories. You didn't help me financially, I stated plainly. I worked through high school and college to support myself because my paychecks went to household expenses while you bought luxuries for Jason. Jason stepped forward, his posture suddenly aggressive. Here we go again with the poor me routine. Mom sacrificed everything for you. She could have had a career, a life, but she gave it all up to raise your ungrateful ass. Jason, Mom warned, but the calculated gentleness was fading from her tone. Let me handle this. She turned back to me with a different tactic, nostalgia. Remember when you were little, and we'd bake cookies together on rainy Sundays? You'd stand on a chair to reach the counter, and I'd let you lick the spoon. We were so close then, Rebecca. What happened to my sweet little girl who loved her mommy so much? The manipulation was so transparent it almost made me laugh. Those cookie baking Sundays had happened perhaps twice in my entire childhood, both times when relatives were visiting and Mom wanted to perform the role of devoted mother. I grew up, I replied simply. And I learned that healthy relationships aren't transactional. Transactional? Is that what they teach you in therapy? Her voice took on a bitter edge. That loving your family, helping your mother in her time of need, is some kind of business transaction? Demanding $30,000 from your daughter isn't love, I countered. Trying to access my financial information without permission isn't love. I never tried to access anything. Mom protested. Jason did. In my home office. And you defended him. Jason rolled his eyes. I was just checking email. You're so paranoid. This conversation isn't productive, I said, taking a step back. I've made my position clear, I will not be providing financial support. Now or in the future. Mom's facade finally crumbled completely. You selfish, ungrateful brat. After everything I've done for you. I put a roof over your head, clothes on your back. That's what parents are supposed to do, I interrupted. It's the bare minimum of parental responsibility, not a debt children have to repay. You owe us. Jason snarled, stepping closer until Marcus straightened up, alert to the escalating tension. You think you're so much better than us with your fancy job and your perfect life. You're nothing without family. I'm not better than you, I said calmly. I just made different choices. I worked hard for what I have. You could do the same. Oh, it's all about hard work with you, Mom sneered. As if luck and privilege had nothing to do with your success. You got lucky with that scholarship, lucky with that first job. Without those lucky breaks, you'd be struggling just like us. Perhaps, I acknowledged, unwilling to debate the complex factors that contribute to any success or failure. But that doesn't obligate me to finance your gambling debts or Jason's unemployed lifestyle. So that's it? Mom's voice rose, attracting the attention of residents entering and exiting the lobby. You're choosing money over family? Your precious bank account over the woman who gave birth to you? I'm choosing my well-being, I corrected her. Financial, emotional, and mental well-being. Something you've never respected. If you walk away now, Mom threatened, her voice dropping to an ominous whisper, don't ever expect to hear from me again. You'll be alone, Rebecca. Completely alone. The threat that had terrified me throughout childhood, abandonment by the only parent who remained, now rang hollow. I had built a life full of people who valued me for myself, not my earning potential. That's your choice, I said quietly. I hope someday we can have a relationship based on mutual respect rather than financial exploitation. But I won't sacrifice my boundaries to maintain an unhealthy connection. You'll regret this, Mom hissed, her composed mask completely gone now. When you're old and alone with nothing but your money to keep you company, you'll remember this day and wish you'd made a different choice. Jason stepped forward, his face twisted with anger, but Marcus moved smoothly into his path. I think it's time for you folks to leave, the security guard said firmly but professionally. Ms. Thompson has made her position clear. You can't throw us out. Mom's voice rose to a shrill cry. I'm her mother. I have rights. This is private property, Marcus explained calmly. And you've been asked to leave by both management and Ms. Thompson. I can call you a taxi, or you can leave on your own, but those are your only options. This isn't over, Jason threatened as Marcus guided them toward the exit. You think you can disrespect our mother like this? We know where you work. We know your friends. The implied threat sent a chill down my spine, but I maintained my composure until they were escorted outside. Once they were gone, my legs nearly buckled with the release of tension. You okay, Miss Thompson? Marcus asked, returning to the lobby. Yes, I managed, though my voice trembled slightly. Thank you for your help. Family stuff is tough, he said with the wisdom of someone who'd seen similar scenes play out many times. You did good standing your ground. Some people take advantage if you give an inch. I nodded, grateful for the validation from an unexpected source. I appreciate your support. Back in my apartment, I documented the entire interaction while it was fresh in my memory, including Jason's veiled threats. Though I hoped it wouldn't be necessary, I was building a paper trail in case I needed legal protection. Later, as evening fell and I tried to process the day's events, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Normally I wouldn't answer, but something compelled me to take the call. Rebecca? It's Lisa. Your father's cousin? We met at your college graduation. I vaguely remembered her, a kind woman with my father's eyes who had traveled from Seattle for the ceremony. Yes, I remember. Is everything okay? I hope you don't mind me calling out of the blue. Your Aunt Susan gave me your number. She said, well, she mentioned you might be going through a difficult time with Diane and Jason. The family grapevine, it seemed, worked in both directions. News travels fast. Diane's been calling everyone in the family, telling quite a story about you abandoning her in Chicago, refusing to help with a small loan during a medical emergency. I sighed. Of course she has. I didn't believe it for a second, Lisa continued. None of us who know Diane's patterns did. Susan filled me in on the real situation, and I just wanted you to know, you're not alone in this. Many of us have been where you are. As she spoke, I realized this call represented something I hadn't expected, validation and support from family members I barely knew, who nonetheless understood exactly what I was experiencing because they had lived through similar manipulations. Diane isolated your father from most of his family while they were married, Lisa explained. When he finally left, she did everything possible to paint him as the villain, including using you kids as emotional pawns. We tried to stay connected to you, but she blocked every attempt. Pieces of my childhood suddenly shifted into new perspective. The mysterious cancellations of visits to paternal relatives. The intercepted birthday cards that must have gotten lost in the mail. The narrative that my father's family didn't care about us, when in reality, they had been systematically excluded. I never knew, I said, my voice thick with emotion. We didn't want to put you in the middle, Lisa explained gently. But now that you're an adult establishing your own boundaries with Diane, we wanted you to know you have family who support your decision and understand exactly why it's necessary. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in days, bolstered by the unexpected discovery of family connections that had been deliberately hidden from me, relatives who validated my experience and supported my boundaries without expecting anything in return. The first week after the confrontation in my building lobby was brutal. Mom and Jason launched a coordinated campaign of harassment, calls from blocked numbers, emails from new addresses to bypass my filters, and social media messages from accounts created specifically to circumvent my blocks. I documented everything methodically, saving voicemails and screenshots in a folder labeled evidence that I hoped I'd never need to use. The content ranged from Mom's tearful pleas about her deteriorating health to Jason's explicit threats about showing up at my workplace. That particular threat materialized on Thursday afternoon. I was in a team meeting when my phone vibrated with a text from the reception desk downstairs. Ms. Thompson, there are 2 individuals insisting on seeing you. They claim to be family and say it's an emergency. Security has been notified per your instructions. A cold wave of anxiety washed over me, but I managed to maintain my composure through the remainder of the meeting. Afterward, I immediately called building security. They caused quite a scene, the security manager informed me. The younger man became verbally aggressive when denied access to the elevators. We had to threaten police involvement before they would leave. My hand shook as I ended the call. The boundary violations were escalating, crossing from my personal life into my professional sphere. I had hoped the lobby confrontation would be the end of it, but clearly, they weren't giving up easily. That evening, I met with a lawyer specializing in harassment cases. She reviewed my documentation and outlined my options, from cease and desist letters to restraining orders. Based on the pattern you've shown me, she said, I recommend we start with a strongly worded cease and desist letter. It doesn't have the legal weight of a restraining order, but it establishes a formal record of your request for no contact and puts them on notice that their behavior is being documented for potential legal action. I authorized her to draft and send the letter, feeling both relief and sadness that my relationship with my mother and brother had deteriorated to the point where legal intervention seemed necessary. The emotional toll was significant. Despite my therapist's assurances that I was taking appropriate steps to protect myself, I still struggled with waves of guilt and doubt. Had I been too harsh? Was I overreacting? Was I a terrible daughter for involving lawyers? Megan proved invaluable during this period, providing both practical support and emotional validation. She stayed over several nights when I felt too anxious to be alone, helped me strengthen my social media privacy settings, and accompanied me to and from work for the first few days after Jason's appearance at my office. It's not forever, she reassured me one evening as we shared takeout Thai food in my living room. This is the extinction burst, they're escalating because their usual tactics aren't working. Once they realize you're serious about your boundaries, they'll eventually back off. At work, I struggled to maintain focus. My productivity dropped noticeably, prompting my manager Sandra to check in with me during our weekly one-on-one. I've noticed you seem distracted lately, she said gently. Everything okay? I hesitated, uncomfortable mixing personal issues with professional settings, but Sandra had always been supportive and understanding. I'm dealing with some family issues, I finally admitted. It's affecting my concentration more than I expected. To my surprise, Sandra shared her own experience with setting boundaries with toxic family members. It took 3 years of limited contact before my relationship with my father reached a healthier place, she told me. Take the time you need. Your projects can wait a week or two. Her understanding brought tears to my eyes and reinforced something Dr. Harrison had been telling me. Healthy relationships, whether personal or professional, involve mutual respect and consideration, concepts foreign to my family of origin but increasingly present in the life I had built for myself. 2 weeks after the cease and desist letter was delivered, the barrage of contact attempts from Mom and Jason finally began to slow. The voicemails became less frequent, the social media attacks ceased entirely, likely due to my increased privacy settings, and no further appearances occurred at my home or workplace. But as one storm subsided, another gathered on the horizon. Mom had apparently been contacting extended family members, sharing a distorted version of events that cast her as the abandoned, desperate mother and me as the cold-hearted daughter who had achieved success and promptly turned my back on family. The first call came from my mother's sister, Aunt Patricia, who had always echoed Mom's perspectives and enabled her worst behaviors. "Rebecca, how could you?" she demanded without preamble when I answered her call. "Your poor mother is beside herself. She might lose her house. And after all she sacrificed for you." I remained calm, having prepared for this eventuality with Dr. Harrison. "Aunt Patricia, I understand Mom has shared her version of events with you. I'm not going to defend myself or argue about her characterization. This is between Mom and me. Family business is everyone's business," she insisted. "We support each other in times of need." "I agree that healthy families support each other," I replied carefully. "But support comes in many forms, and I'm not in a position to provide the specific type of support Mom is demanding." The conversation ended with her declaration that I'd changed and not for the better. Similar calls followed from two more relatives on my mother's side, each expressing disappointment in my abandonment of family obligations. But then something unexpected happened. My father's sister, Aunt Susan, called with a completely different message. "I heard what happened with Diane and Jason," she said. "I want you to know how proud I am of you for standing up for yourself." Tears sprang to my eyes at this unexpected validation. "You believe me? About what happened?" "Of course I do," she said firmly. "I watched Diane do the same thing to your father for years. Take and take and take, while painting herself as the victim whenever he tried to establish financial boundaries." We talked for nearly 2 hours, Susan filling in gaps in my understanding of my parents' marriage and my father's eventual departure. She shared stories of similar manipulations Diane had perpetrated against other family members, loans never repaid, emotional blackmail, smear campaigns against anyone who refused her demands. "You're not the first person she's tried this with," Susan assured me. "And you're not alone. There are people in this family who understand exactly what you're dealing with because we've been through it ourselves." That conversation marked the beginning of reconnections with my father's side of the family, relatives I had been told didn't care about me but who, in reality, had been systematically pushed away by my mother's controlling behavior. 3 months after the initial confrontation, life began settling into a new normal. The cease and desist letter had been effective, contact attempts from Mom and Jason had dwindled to occasional texts that I could easily ignore. Work had stabilized as I regained my focus and concentration. My circle of support had expanded to include newly discovered family connections who understood my situation without judgment. Weekly therapy sessions continued, helping me process the complex emotions of establishing and maintaining boundaries with family members who refused to respect them. The guilt didn't disappear entirely, but it lessened with time and perspective. "Guilt is the emotional tax we pay for changing unhealthy patterns," Dr. Harrison explained during one particularly difficult session. "It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. Often, it means you're finally doing something right for yourself." I found unexpected healing through volunteering with a nonprofit that helped young adults aging out of foster care establish financial independence. Sharing my knowledge about budgeting, saving, and protecting financial boundaries gave purpose to my painful experiences and transformed them into tools to help others. I also began mentoring Alicia, a junior developer at my company who came from a similar background of family financial exploitation. Seeing her gain confidence in both her technical skills and her personal boundaries reinforced my conviction that breaking unhealthy cycles was worth the emotional cost. The holidays approached, traditionally a time of heightened anxiety due to family expectations. This year would be my first without any contact with my mother and brother, a prospect that filled me with both relief and a lingering sadness for what could have been. Grief for the family relationship you deserved but never had is a natural part of the healing process, Dr. Harrison assured me. It doesn't mean you should return to toxic dynamics. I made plans to spend Thanksgiving with Megan's family, who had warmly included me in their gatherings since college, and Christmas with newly reconnected cousins on my father's side who had reached out after hearing about my situation. For the first time, the holiday season approached without the dread of financial demands disguised as family obligation. I felt lighter, more present, more capable of genuine connection with the people who truly cared about me. Then, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Jason appeared at my door. I almost didn't recognize him at first. The sullen, aggressive brother who had threatened me 3 months earlier had been replaced by someone who looked different. Cleaner cut. More put together. His usual designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a plain button-up shirt. More notably, the entitled sneer that had been his default expression was absent. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice lacking its usual combative edge. "Just for a few minutes. I'm alone. Mom doesn't know I'm here." Every instinct told me to close the door, but something in his demeanor gave me pause. I left the security chain engaged and spoke through the narrow opening. "What do you want, Jason?" He shifted uncomfortably. "I got a job. Nothing fancy. Warehouse work. Been there almost a month now. This was so unexpected that I momentarily lost my wariness. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, well. He stared at the floor. Turns out when you can't mooch off your sister or your mom, you have to figure stuff out for yourself. I waited, sensing there was more. Mom and I had a falling out, he continued after an awkward silence. After the lawyer letter came, she got even worse. Kept talking about how we'd make you pay, how we'd show up at your job again, more aggressive stuff. I started thinking maybe you weren't completely wrong about her. My heart pounded. Was this genuine, or another manipulation tactic? What do you want from me, Jason? He looked up, meeting my eyes directly for perhaps the first time in years. Nothing. I mean, not money or anything. I've been thinking about what you said. About working for what you have. I'm trying to do that now. I studied his face, searching for signs of deception but finding only discomfort and something that looked surprisingly like shame. That's really good to hear, I said carefully. I'm not asking to come in or anything, he clarified quickly. I know I acted like a total asshole. I wouldn't trust me either. He paused, seeming to struggle with words. I wanted to say I get it now. A little bit. What it's like to work for your own stuff instead of just taking from other people. The cynical part of me remained wary, but another part, perhaps the part that had always hoped for some kind of real connection with my only sibling, allowed for the possibility that this might be genuine. I appreciate you telling me that, I said. And I'm really glad you're working. That's a big step. He nodded, looking relieved that I hadn't immediately shut him down. I'm staying with a buddy now, trying to save for my own place. Mom's pissed that I'm not backing her up anymore in her campaign against you. How is she? I asked, surprised to find I still cared despite everything. Jason shrugged. Same as always. Still gambling, still blaming everyone else for her problems. She found some new friends to manipulate for cash. He hesitated. I'm trying to stay clear of her drama now. It's hard. She knows exactly how to make me feel like crap for not helping her. In that moment, I saw something I'd missed before. Jason had been as much a victim of Mom's manipulation as I had been, just in a different way. While I'd been cast as the responsible provider, he'd been enabled into helplessness, denied the opportunity to develop independence or self-sufficiency. It gets easier, I told him. Setting boundaries with her, I mean. It's still hard for me too. He nodded, looking grateful for the understanding. Anyway, I should go. I've got a shift in an hour. He turned to leave, then paused. I don't expect us to be close or anything. I know I screwed that up. But I wanted you to know I'm trying to. I don't know. Be better, I guess. After he left, I sat on my couch for a long time, processing the unexpected encounter. Was it possible that my standing firm on my boundaries had inadvertently helped Jason begin finding his own independence? I didn't want to take credit for his choices, but the timing suggested the family upheaval had created an opening for change. I called Dr. Harrison and recounted the conversation, seeking her perspective on whether this represented a genuine shift or another, more subtle form of manipulation. It could be either, she acknowledged. People can change when their circumstances force them to confront reality. But change is also rarely linear or complete. The important thing is that you maintain your boundaries while allowing for the possibility of growth. Her advice was to proceed with cautious optimism, neither closing the door entirely on a potentially healthier relationship with Jason nor throwing open the gates to potential exploitation. When I shared the encounter with Megan over coffee the next day, her reaction mirrored my own complex feelings. Warehouse job, huh? That's actually impressive for someone who's never worked consistently before, she said. But also, trust needs to be earned back, not just given because someone says the right things once. Exactly, I agreed. I'm glad he's working, and I hope it's a real turning point for him. But I'm not ready to fully trust him yet. In the weeks that followed, I maintained my boundaries with both Mom and Jason. Mom continued her occasional attempts at contact, ranging from guilt trips to saccharine expressions of maternal concern, all transparently aimed at re-establishing the financial dynamic I had rejected. Jason, surprisingly, respected my space. He texted a few times, brief, non-demanding messages simply updating me on his continued employment or asking how I was doing. I responded with similar brevity and caution, neither encouraging deeper connection nor shutting down the tentative communication entirely. As Thanksgiving approached, I found myself reflecting on the tumultuous months since my promotion had triggered the family crisis. Despite the stress and emotional turmoil, I realized I had gained something invaluable: clarity about my worth beyond my financial utility to others. The holiday itself was a revelation, a warm, chaotic gathering with Megan's family where nobody asked me for money, guilted me about my success, or expected me to solve their financial problems. We ate too much, played board games, and shared stories with no hidden agendas or manipulations. It felt foreign but wonderful. Christmas brought another new experience, connecting with my father's extended family for the first time in years. Aunt Susan hosted a gathering that included cousins I barely remembered and their children I had never met. They welcomed me with a warmth that felt both unfamiliar and right, sharing family stories and creating new connections that had been denied to me through my mother's deliberate isolation tactics. "Your dad would be so proud of you," Aunt Susan told me quietly as we washed dishes after dinner. My father had passed away 5 years earlier from a heart attack, something I had learned about months after the funeral because Mom had forgotten to tell me. "I wish I had known him better," I admitted. "He wanted to be in your life more," she said gently. The divorce agreement gave Diane primary custody, and she made it nearly impossible for him to see you and Jason. "He tried, Rebecca. Many times." This confirmation of what I had begun to suspect, that my father hadn't abandoned us but had been systematically pushed away, brought both pain and healing. Another piece of my childhood narrative shifted into clearer focus, another manipulation exposed. As winter gave way to spring, I found my professional focus fully restored. My team's project launched successfully, and I was tapped to lead an even more significant initiative. My financial security continued to grow, allowing me to not only build my own safety net but also contribute to causes that mattered to me. I developed a personal financial philosophy centered on security, generosity, and boundaries, saving consistently for my future, donating to organizations that helped vulnerable populations, and maintaining clear limits on financial entanglements with others. Jason and I established a cautious, limited communication pattern. He remained employed, moved into his own small apartment, and seemed to be developing independence for the first time in his life. We occasionally met for coffee, always in public places, always with clear time limits, and navigated the beginnings of what might eventually become a healthier sibling relationship. Mom, however, remained unchanged. When her attempts to re-establish control over me failed, she simply found new targets for her manipulation. Through family grapevines, I learned she had latched onto a recently divorced cousin with a generous settlement, playing the same familiar cards of family obligation and maternal sacrifice. "You can't change someone who doesn't see anything wrong with their behavior," Dr. Harrison reminded me during one of our now monthly sessions. "But you can change how you respond to it." 6 months after the confrontation in my lobby, I received an unexpected call from Mom. My finger hovered over the decline button, but curiosity won out. "Rebecca?" Her voice sounded different, smaller somehow, less commanding. "I need to talk to you." "I'm listening," I replied cautiously. "Face to face. Please. Just once." Against my better judgment and the advice of virtually everyone in my support system, I agreed to meet her, not at my apartment or hers, but at a neutral coffee shop with plenty of witnesses. I arrived early, chose a table with a clear view of both entrances, and waited with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. The carefully maintained appearance had slipped, her roots were showing, her clothes looked worn, her makeup less precise. Age and stress had caught up with her in the months since I'd last seen her. Thank you for coming, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. What do you want, Mom? I asked, not unkindly but without the automatic deference I would have shown in the past. She fidgeted with her purse strap. I've been doing some thinking. About us. About how things ended up this way. I waited, skeptical but listening. I want us to have a relationship again, she continued. I miss my daughter. What kind of relationship? I asked carefully. Because if you're hoping I'll reconsider financial support. No, she interrupted hastily. I understand your boundaries about money. I respect that. The words sounded rehearsed, and my skepticism deepened. You respect my financial boundaries now? What's changed? She sighed, looking genuinely deflated for the first time in my memory. Reality, I suppose. Jason won't help me anymore either. Says he's focusing on his independence or whatever nonsense you put in his head. And there it was, not acceptance of my boundaries, but simply the recognition that her old tactics were no longer working. Not respect for my autonomy, but resentment that I had allegedly influenced Jason to develop his own. I didn't put anything in Jason's head, I said evenly. He made his own decisions after I set my boundaries. She waved this away impatiently. The point is, I'm alone now. Completely alone. Is that what you wanted? Your mother with no one to turn to? The guilt hook was baited and cast with practiced precision, but for once, I didn't bite. What I wanted was a mother who loved me for who I am, not what I could provide financially, I said quietly. I still want that. But I don't think you're capable of giving it. Her face hardened. So you're punishing me? Is that it? I'm not punishing you, Mom. I'm protecting myself. From your own mother? The woman who gave you life? Who sacrificed everything for you? The familiar refrains no longer had the power to cut me to the quick. Yes, I said simply. From behaviors that hurt me. That's not punishment. It's self-care. Her eyes narrowed. You and your therapy jargon. Self-care. Boundaries. All these trendy words to justify turning your back on family. I took a deep breath. Mom, why did you want to meet today? What were you hoping would happen? She looked momentarily thrown by the directness of the question. I told you. I want us to have a relationship again. What does that look like to you? Specifically? Well, you'd come visit more often. We'd talk regularly. Like normal mothers and daughters. And the financial aspect? Her eyes slid away from mine. I already said I respect your boundaries about money. But? I prompted, hearing the unspoken qualification in her tone. But of course family helps each other in emergencies, she added, a familiar calculating look entering her eyes. Real emergencies, not the day-to-day stuff. And there it was, the true purpose of this meeting. Not reconnection, not rebuilding trust, but establishing a backdoor to financial access labeled emergencies that would inevitably multiply once the precedent was set. I can't do this anymore, I said, gathering my purse. Nothing has changed. You still see me as a financial resource, not a daughter. That's not true, she protested. I love you. I just need my money, I finished for her. And that's the problem. Your love has always been conditional on what I can provide for you. I stood up, surprisingly calm despite the confrontation. I hope someday you get help, Mom. Real help, for the gambling and the manipulation and everything else. I'll always be open to a relationship based on mutual respect, but this isn't it. Her face contorted with rage, the vulnerable mask dropping away completely. You think you're so much better than me. So perfect with your fancy job and your therapy. You're a cold, selfish person, Rebecca. Just like your father. Maybe I am like Dad, I acknowledged, feeling a strange peace settle over me. And maybe that's not the insult you think it is. I walked away without looking back, her angry words following me but no longer penetrating my hard-won emotional armor. Outside the coffee shop, I took a deep breath of spring air and felt the weight of decades of guilt and obligation finally, fully lift from my shoulders. The grief remained, grief for the mother I had needed but never had, for the family relationships that could have been but never were, but it was clean grief now, not the toxic mixture of guilt, resentment, and obligation that had poisoned my life for so long. My phone buzzed with a text from Megan. How did it go? Need rescue? I smiled and typed back, all good. Meeting for lunch still on? As I walked to my car, I realized that my definition of family had transformed over these difficult months. Family wasn't determined by blood or obligation, but by mutual respect, genuine care, and healthy boundaries. I had lost a toxic connection with my mother, but gained authentic relationships with Jason, with my father's relatives, with chosen family like Megan, and most importantly, with myself. The financial success that had triggered this family crisis was just money, important for security and comfort, yes, but ultimately just a tool. The real wealth in my life was the network of healthy relationships I had built and the inner peace that came from knowing my own worth extended far beyond my bank account. I couldn't change my mother. I couldn't heal the wounds of my childhood or rewrite the past. But I could, and had, changed how I responded to manipulation. I had broken the cycle of financial exploitation that had defined my family relationships for as long as I could remember. And in doing so, I had freed not only myself, but potentially future generations from that toxic legacy. As I drove to meet Megan for lunch, I felt something I hadn't expected to find at the end of this difficult journey: hope. Hope for a future defined by authentic connections rather than financial obligations. Hope that the boundaries I had fought so hard to establish would create space for relationships based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. Hope that by valuing myself, I had opened the door to being truly valued by others. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who saw you as a financial resource rather than a person? How did you handle the guilt and obligation that often comes with these situations? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you want more stories about building healthy relationships and setting boundaries with difficult family members. Remember, you deserve connections based on mutual respect, not exploitation. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you courage and clarity on your own journey toward healthier relationships.